Greetings, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Roll of a Tangent. Our team, Nikki Zueff, Anthony Simeone, XJ, and yours truly, Robert Gibson, alias Zendexor, are recording this podcast very appropriately on the Ides of March, a good day to discuss a tale of charismatic leadership and transfers of power. The story is by Cyril Kornbluth and is called The Adventurer, though to my mind it would be far better titled The Leader. Kornbluth's dense, biting style, entirely lacking in purple prose, packs a heck of a lot in less than 15 pages. The narrative begins in a time when the US has obviously suffered a long period of rule by a hereditary presidency. We are shown what it's like to be a member of the cabinet during the reign of the petulant and capricious President Folsom the 24th. 2 pages into the story, during a private conversation between ministers who live in fear of being executed, we hear a subdued reference to our programme, but its nature only becomes evident during the last page. Then the tale takes on an unexpected twist that is typically Kornbluthian. It turns out, spoiler alert here, that the programme consisted of a plot to manufacture a mould-breaking historical force in the form of a leader to use the basic fact that certain men make history. Again and again, I'm quoting now, they flash across history, bringing down an ancient empire, turning ordinary soldiers of the line into unkillable demons of battle, uprooting cultures, breathing new life into moribund peoples. End of quote. Well, the conspirators succeed in triggering off such a phenomenon in the form of a certain Thomas Grayson, who comes up from nowhere to become a war hero who overthrows the Folsom dictatorship. Then, in the exquisite final scene, the conspirators explain to Grayson how he has been manufactured. Need I say what Grayson's reaction turns out to be? Take them out and whimsical shrug. And now I'll turn you over to my charismatic, ambitious fellow co-hosts to ask their opinion. How about the youngest first, Nikki Zuber?
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's been a long time. Good to see you all and good to see the audience. At this point, we have looked at an interesting story, The Adventurer, and it's a bang of a start for the year. I'll just describe to you first my experience with how I read it. The first few pages, I thought, well, this is really dark comedy. And then I read the passage where it described to us what was happening with Grayson in his childhood, and I was like, what is this tone? What is going on? And with that hell of a punch with how horrible his childhood was, the next scene felt more serious. And so did all the subsequent ones. So that shift after the first scene, sort of introducing to you just the fact that this isn't just a cookie cutter sort of mockery of dictatorship. Really put everything into perspective. And afterwards, as I was reading it, I was actually surprised by the ending somehow. I think it's because I was just so thrown off by everything else that was in the story that I did not expect this Grayson guy to be the bad guy as well. Well, the bad guy, there's no good or bad in such situations. There's just degrees of evil. But the fact that he was just exactly as bad as everybody else who would have been on that throne, him talking about his divinity out of nowhere, it just fit. It was a well constructed journey that the author took me on. So it's hard to describe exactly the feeling and the moment that I felt like, okay, everything shifted, um, because it was such an emotional roller coaster. So I think the only way you could experience is by reading it yourself. And that is what I would recommend. I think there's a lot of very interesting things, morsels inside that piece. The cabal of these ministers who have concocted a plan to overthrow the current regime for something better, and then them being immediately punished for their coercion. Um, Actually happens a lot in reality, and it's funny how sometimes the only thing that can punish evil is another and sometimes greater evil. We don't know what the world is going to look like under Grayson the First, but well, if he thinks of himself as the God Emperor, I think yeah, I think the citizens of the Republic are in for a hell of a period. Yeah, it was an enjoyable read. I had fun analyzing it. I actually read it a second time to see if I would see any more sort of indications that Grayson would be going to the other side of the situation. And besides the idea of how realistic it is that somebody who came from abuse would choose abuse, um, there wasn't as much there. So that was like the one downside. I thought that, oh, if the narrative is such, maybe there's going to be a lot more to see on the second reading. But for me, at least, it wasn't the case. Still, solid story. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, those are my thoughts for the moment. Akshay?
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't have any expectations when I opened up the story, and I think that's probably a good thing because one, I don't know. I feel like the title of the story, first of all, is kind of misleading. I don't understand what the adventure has to do with the story at all. And as exactly as Nikki said, the story goes off in some seriously wild directions. Like the beginning does not give you any indication at all of how it's going to turn out. And I think that's fine. I think it's definitely one of those stories where you just like go for the ride and see where the author takes you. That said, it's not a badly written story at all. There are some. I feel like a strange sense of real life overlapping with the story when I was reading this. I gotta admit, and I sometimes wonder if the scenes in several government halls might not look exactly like that sometimes. Not the executions, but just like how wild as is portrayed in the story. Yeah, I think like the child abuse part was really graphic, and it's particularly, to me, it comes out as very strong and also like a very totally different tone from how the story opens. My rambling basically is my way of saying the story is very hard for me to define. I don't dislike it. I also don't really know how to categorize it, to be quite honest. Yeah, I wasn't expecting what I read, to sum it up. Yeah. All right. Anyone else want to take over?
And Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This was really a difficult read for me. Just in terms of how I felt about it, maybe same thing with maybe sort of shades of XJ. I just don't know what to make of it. Maybe I'm just living in a time in my own nation where maybe I just can't take satire right now as far as government and leaders are concerned. So I felt like I read the story sort of in a haze when I was reading. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, yes, I agree. The title was Why. I mean, I agree with Rob. the leader should have been the title. I don't know why it was the adventurer, but editors be editing, right? So, but reading it, I maybe I'm just too close to I live in a country where the regime is sort of, I sort of feel like they would have, if they could, they would establish a presidential monarchy, for an oxymoron that it is. If they could have, Trump the 24th someday, they would have it. So, laying my political feelings about my current regime and power in my country on the table, laid bare. But which is obviously antithetical to democracy in a republic, right? You're not supposed to have a president that is there should be not. It's not a hereditary succession for presidency. So I don't know, but given the fact that I live in something of what I would consider a potentially nascent totalitarian hellhole, I feel like maybe this story cut a little too deep, and I think good literature can do that. So I'm really on the fence here. I'm really looking forward to discussing this with all of you and hearing Rob's impressions of it, because to me it was just a straight allegory. It just seemed allegorical, and I felt like the ending was just so on the nose, though, that I really was like, okay, so they're just going to come in and basically exposition. It was like exposition time at the end. Like, oh, listen, you're just a figurehead, a puppet, see, of our plans. And I'm like, that just kind of feels like our government here in the People's Republic of the United States right now. So I don't know. It was just, it gave me a lot of feelings about my own life and situation. So maybe by that token, that's what good literature is supposed to do. I feel like it's supposed to make you reflect on your current age. So I was really, hey, there was references to other planets, and I'm like, that's cool, but I really wasn't in the mood for science fiction at that point. It was just like, wow, this story's making me feel things that I don't want to feel about my own situation in life. So anyway, but that's kind of where all I got from reading this experience. So, and it was relatively short. So it was like, I don't feel good right now after reading it. And I'm like, I feel depressed about my own reality. But anyway, that's where I'm at. So Rob, take it up.
Right. Yeah. To me, it's very clear that the main point of the story is the idea of manufacturing a world-shaking dictator. It's not just any old dictator. It's one whose rise has been artificially created by an analysis of the factors which make these unusual geniuses take over. So it's not just any old dictator. Now, this leads me to mention what could be regarded as the main flaw in the story, although I don't think for me it is a flaw. But if I was briefed to attack the story, I would say that most of it is quite realistic in its own terms, but the idea that the outgoing cabinet would be so naive as to explain to Grayson in his hour of triumph that he's been manufactured. Nobody could be that naive. No politicians especially could be that naive. But of course they do. They explain, now look here, Mr. Grayson, you were manufactured by this, that, and the other method, and they expect him to. Well, I don't know what they expect him to do, but certainly what he actually does do is not what they expect. Now, as I say, if I were briefed to attack the story, I would point this out. But I think there are certain conventions in very short, powerful short stories that are necessary conventions, and they are necessarily unrealistic. Just to compare it with another aspect of fiction, it's another convention that in narrative fiction of any length, you're meant to suspend disbelief about how much dialogue a narrator can be expected to remember. In normal first-person narratives, the narrator remembers everything that was said. Now, no human being could really do that, but we just accept that that's part of the conventions of literature. Now, in this story, in order for it to be wrapped up in 15 pages, these people have to be naive as they are at the end. They have to explain what's been going on, and they have to put up with Grayson's reaction, which is quite predictable. So I accept that. I don't think it's a flaw in the story, really. But there you are. That's. I think it's worth pointing that out. I want to say something else, and just one more thing. Well, two more things really. The adventurer. Another way of changing the title, instead of saying the leader, would be to say the opportunist, because apart from devotion to his own duty, I'm sure that the Grayson types of history don't really care how they get to the top, as long as they do it. So the opportunist would be another possible title. Just more general comment to wind up my little speech. This story came out in the 1950s. I'll just tell you exactly when. It's in the best of Cyril Kornbluth. The Adventurer, a magazine called Space Science Fiction, May 1953. I just want to say that the 1950s saw an amazing explosion of science fictional talent. People talk about the 1940s as the golden age of science fiction. Well, they were in a way, but the 1950s were even more golden, in my opinion. Anyway, that's my say. Who'd like to say something else?
No, go ahead, Anthony. Sorry.
No, I kind of also, I just got done reading or rereading some articles about Dune or some musings on Dune, and that really was my biggest exposure to science fiction warning us about charismatic leaders and manufactured leaders, and obviously, which is sort of what Paul Atreides is. And Paul Atreides is not someone who's aspirational, really. A lot of people say, "Oh, hey, Paul's great, and he's a tragic figure, and he's a hero." And I'm like, well, not really. He is a manufactured. If you know anything about the story, he's a manufactured. He is a manufactured figure by the power structure. One of the power structures in his universe, and he was put basically on the throne, so to speak. So it's it was so that this had echoes of that for me, but just in a much more condensed story. So, but anyway, I just kind of brought that to mind. But anyway, go ahead, XJ. You were saying?
Yeah, I was going to say that some of these older stories definitely are written with more than just entertainment in mind, and like you brought up Dune, like what was it, the Kiswatch Haderach, or
He was the Kwisatz Haderach. Yeah, right. Bred by the Bene Gesserit. Right?
Yeah, I mean, like the whole thing about Dune is definitely like Frank Herbert's way of saying, like, beware of charismatic leaders, and I am in this particular story, I definitely get the sense at the end of be careful of not be careful, but people unleashing things that they have no control over, that they think is going to be that they think is a force, that they think is going to do what they want, and then it ends up eating them up. And I think it's definitely a story that I would use in a literature class if I just for a few lessons, just like do some examination and some literary, like pulling parts of, just like examining and analyzing the story, because there's clearly more to it than just like the surface level stuff. and even like the style of writing, like the technique the author chose is really interesting, because when it started, I thought it was going to be a comedy, and the way the 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 very petulant way that the president for life uh, uses speech pattern, just like turns it, just like makes it even more forceful, and then it very quickly took a dark turn with a description of Grayson, like a very um, very strong depiction of abuse. And yeah, I'm actually so curious about what you guys think about what theme this story is trying to explore. Yeah.
Well, obviously, it's the succession, right? Succession of tyranny, how it transpires, why it transpires. Um, I don't know. For me, it might also be colored by the fact that I read things like Archipelago Gulag by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that like any visceral reaction that I might have to anything of the sort is long dead. I'm too jaded. So it did not have the adverse effect that it had on Anthony for me. Simply because it was like, oh, that's neat. That's like a baby's first tyranny is bad. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely graphic in some stages, and that's what pulled me into it. The scene that you've mentioned, it's there to do exactly what it did to you and me, XJ. To say, okay, hold on, right? This might seem comical, but let me just show you where this is leading, right? So the author, um, he with that, sorry, excuse me, with that moment, he sort of foreshadows what is coming next, what is going to be the ending, and how it's going to be a tragic one through that. But there, as I said before, there isn't enough of a pathway made, a stepstones created in the story for it to be a timeless loop. A feeling where, for example, a great piece of art was a video game called BioShock. In BioShock, if any of you have not played it, it's a very old game, or if you yourself, it's very old. Um, BioShock is about an alternative universe that is on our planet, but the very powerful and rich in the 1930s, 40s, and the 50s decided that life on the surface of the planet is a crazy mess in every nation. So they decided to create their own. One man decided to create his own nation. His name was Andrew Ryan. And he created an underwater city to which he invited all of the best scholars, all of the best scientists, the greatest politicians, the the merchants, everyone he could. He gathered and placed them into what he called Rapture. That was the name of his city. And throughout that game, there's a certain plot point that you as a person have been manufactured, just like the character of Grayson in The Adventurer. And when it comes out and how it is used is incredible. Because throughout the entire game, you have someone on the radio who keeps talking to you. And every time they ask you to do a quest in the game, which you are mandatory must do to progress through the game anyway. If you don't do the quest, you can't keep seeing more of the story. They say, "Would you kindly?" And this single sentence goes throughout the entire game, and you can replay it. And you can see that every time you're given a command, right, like in a video game, you must do this mission. He says, "Would you kindly?" And then in the last, second to last mission of the game, it shows you that you are a sleeper agent who has been surgically remade to respond to that set of words from a certain set of vocal cords, to obey completely what somebody says to you. So you realize that the entire game has been leading you with this one phrase. And that is what's missing in the adventure. That little bit. And it's so small, and you might say, "Oh, that's a cool detail," but like, does it really like change the way you look at Bioshock? Yes, yes. To me, that's the core of it. That's what makes you go, "Oh, the author is smarter than me." The entire time he was dangling the keys in front of me, and I couldn't even see it. So that is like really my only critique for the adventure. But the contents themselves and what they pertain, I think is a very good story and a very good lesson for us all that we will unfortunately never learn as humanity. There you go.
Yeah, uh, I agree. That's the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history, right? And so it was just, we keep, I don't know, is there a certain equilibrium, or will we always need people to write this sort of thing? So only a few of us will recognize that tyranny is a bad thing, no matter where it originates from. There's so many arguments I read online about, oh, well, oh, well, this organization that led to a debilitating rise of power of tyrants was left leaning. And then, oh, well, this one was right leaning. It doesn't matter when it comes to tyranny, what direction, left, right, or center. It's, just like you said, like I haven't read the Gulag Archipelago, but I've heard about it. But unfortunately, I've heard about it from knuckleheads like Jordan Peterson. But he uses it from like a right leaning perspective. But then there's more left leaning people too that also make reference to the Gulag Archipelago, and actually just listen to like the whole history of like how that came about, which is really fascinating. But if anyone wants to dig into that, just look on YouTube, Google it. But yeah, it's sort of this depressing. The story just made me depressed because yes, there's always these figureheads that get propped up by various power structures. Then, and like I did play the game. I did play BioShock. And yeah, it was this just another tyrant. You can call him a libertarian, you can call him whatever. You can. It kind of, that game gave me shades of Ayn Rand, right? Like Atlas Shrugged and all that tripe that she wrote. So it was just like this, yeah, this myth of the extraordinary man. But really, yeah, all politics really is just power play and manufacturing of power. And in my own country, it's like get the votes. Parties will sacrifice everything to just get votes, and they'll manipulate the populace and they'll manipulate leaders. And who cares what civilization is like afterwards? It gets everything can get burned all the way down to the ground, scorched earth. But as long as we're in power, that's all that matters. So in my country, it's led to the rise of like a lot of, horrific things and horrific mindsets that people have, where they really boil down to, oh, well, this person is less than me. So, and that just is this where tyranny springs from. And that's why you can't control these people. Just like in this story, they create this manufactured person and they're like, you set it free and he's most likely going to execute you too. Your time will come. There's going to be a problem with you eventually. And you're going to be, put to death. So, or shrug, as it were, but yeah, so this was I can't say that I enjoyed the story. I felt like it was a little too like on the nose. I like the more subtle like story, but sometimes maybe that's what civilization needs. Maybe for the less literary minded, I feel like this is a story you would give to someone who needs a lesson in what tyranny looks like, but also maybe, hey, here's a little science fiction too. But it's like, oh yeah, this is very obvious what this story is about and what it's critiquing, but not as subtle as Dune, that's for sure. But that's why everybody thinks Paul Atreides is an aspirational figure, or most people do. But anyway,
I think your comparison of Grayson to Paul Atreides is actually quite on the nose. If I can borrow your phrase, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because it's really there is a very strong sense of people looking for a savior within the short story, and then they manufacture the savior, but they were really like just like giving like a lot of power over to the savior to come save them from whatever it is that they are suffering from, and in this case it was to change the regime, and well, they, you know what they say, right? Be careful what you wish for and all of that. So yeah, I think your comparison to Dune for this short story is a very, very good one.
Mm.
Rob, do you have any further thoughts?
Yeah. I wouldn't class Cyril Kornbluth as a restful writer. Certainly, his style, as I said in my introduction, is quite dense, though not so much in this story. But at first I thought that I'd recommend another story, an even shorter one, The Last Man Left in the Bar. And I reread it and I thought, gosh, I don't know what the heck my teammates will think of this one. It's really, really dense. It's really hard to understand. It's good. It's a really creepy one, but I don't know. I suppose that if I warn you beforehand, maybe I won't feel so bad about recommending it for another podcast. But certainly you wouldn't expect an easy read from it. And he's very, shall we say, elusive. That is to say, he expects the reader to understand some quite obscure references, or what would be obscure references if you didn't happen to have his own background. He's a very intellectual, intelligent writer, and he demands quite a lot from his readers. He's not just a writer of action adventure. So I don't know. I like him, but I wouldn't. He's not in my comfort zone, if you like.
I think I will agree with you. It's he's definitely, I mean, not a bad writer by any stretch of the imagination. Clearly, there's a lot going on in that story. Very compact. But yeah, not
Compact, yeah. That's the word.
not a very comfortable read, I gotta say, on multiple levels.
Mm. Yeah.
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 So
I liked Anthony's comparison of with June. Actually, I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but it's obvious once he made the point.
yeah, I was actually, how does it compare to Warhammer actually, Nikki?
Yeah.
Way too nice.
Way too much?
Way too nice.
Way too nice. Fair enough.
In Warhammer, he would have been like, okay, destroy them, destroy their entire dynasty, everyone who is alive. Actually, don't destroy them. Take half of them and make them into robots, which will never die, but still maybe have consciousness, although we lobotomize them. Then they will be working in the factories until the end of this planet, which will probably come in 500 years when the aliens eat everybody. Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
it's way too nice for Warhammer. It's nowhere near.
That's why you're not at all surprised by the ending, hey?
Yeah, I'm jaded, man. The stuff I've seen, the stuff I've read, the stuff I've experienced in real life, none of this. I'm like, yeah, looks like an average day in the cabinet of some country. Yeah, okay.
Damn. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein's cabinet. It was rather like that, I should think. Yeah.
Could be. I wasn't there, I
Yeah.
can tell you.
Yeah, it was just it really is sort of training wheels, right? You have baby's first totalitarian story, right? Like you were saying, Nikki. It's very quaint. Again, it's in its time. You can see, you wouldn't be like, shrug. Oh, it was like he didn't want to say how terrible it was. You could leave it up, whatever their torture is or their execution is like, it leaves it up to the reader's imagination. Like, oh, take them out and, hey, could be drawing and quartering, could be extermination of an entire planet.
You
Like,
know
you
the
never know.
worst-
I don't
You
know.
know the worst thing about that though is, I mean, I was feeling this when I read it, but it was like a flash in my mind, and now that you touched on it, it brought it back up. It was like if you're like the boss, and then you just kind of like that, and you leave it open for your lackeys to do some stuff. Whatever happens is probably going to be even worse than the boss could do himself, because the lackeys would be trying to impress the boss and totally overdo things. So in a way, it's even more like capricious and cruel.
Yep. I agree.
Nice.
Nice. Yes, it's a very nice story compared to Warhammer. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Very quaint.
I mean, you should not compare anything to Warhammer, because it is a satire of highest quality when it comes to cruelty. So if we ever get to Warhammer levels, I mean, it's all over. Because we literally are living the nightmare. In that case, then there's no going back. Then it's over.
Yeah.
On that cheerful note, I'm not sure if it's not because the story is bad, but I don't know what to say about it. I think it's such a like, yep, that's what it is. That really sucks. Those scenes really are not for the faint-hearted. Read it.
I think
it was. I mean,
I don't know about. I think me and Anthony and Dicky, we're all kind of like not sure what to say about the story, to be quite honest. Like how to rate it.
I mean, from a technicality standpoint, I think it was. I enjoyed the writing style, and I felt like it was technically excellent. I mean, it was a good example of good writing, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm the eternal optimist, and I keep getting disappointed though by the human race. You know, like, humanity would be great if it wasn't for all the people, right? That sort of thing. But but it's I guess the tech from a technical standpoint, yes, great. From like just the subject matter, and like it seemed quaint to a point, but then it was like, oh geez, kind of reminded me about something that I'd rather forget. It was like how people can be so easily led to, just for the sake of a little bit of comfort and surety, and while they're voting against their own best interest, or giving away their freedom so that you can have a hereditary president, which is again like jumbo shrimp. It's an oxymoron. You're not supposed to have hereditary presidents, right? So, but yeah, I guess it depressed me.
There's a hereditary presidency today in South Korea. North Korea. Hereditary presidency. It actually is hereditary. They haven't got to Kim the 24th yet, but I think it's the third.
You know the really interesting thing is he already has a successor. He's already named one. His daughter.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like the funniest twist to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could she be the first woman dictator? I mean, there were emperors.
No, because there were so many before in history. So no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What are there? No, wait. Does Imelda Marcos count? Or no? I don't know
what that is.
In recent history, no. She was the wife, right, of a dictator. She just had a lot of shoes. She was a dictator of shoes.
If I would be a dictator of anything, I would prefer it to be shoes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Right. They don't talk back. Right.
That's right, man. They have very easy to persuade those few boots. Yeah, just put them all in a row.
Right. It's like a riddle. What has a tongue but doesn't talk back or argue with you? Right?
They do have tongues and they don't talk back. That's true.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Incredible.
And you can stomp all over them, man.
Okay, I think once we're going into shoe metaphors, we can go to scoring. Or I think it's over. I think that's it. What else do you want?
I gotta be honest with you guys. I don't know how to score this story, man.
Me neither. But just I just
I
just
really don't know.
Or you can just
cover
give
your
it
eyes and pick a number.
I mean, let's go to the obvious answer. So, Robert, why is it a 10 out of 10?
no. I'd give it a 9 because
Oh,
I
Okay.
I can think of stories which I got more enjoyment out of, but nevertheless, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
well, you all heard it here, folks. The story sucks. It only gets a 9, so don't read it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I will give it. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's good. It has good elements. I think most of that point growth came from the verisimilitude and the absolute break of it. When the second scene started in the story with what happened with Grayson, that transition was masterful, and it showcased the real mechanisms behind the author's mind. But yeah, I mean, we've talked extensively about what could have been better in the story, and I still believe that way. So that's why it's 7.5.
Hmm.
Something that struck me, and I'm going to unnecessarily pet this podcast. But you were mentioning Nikki that Bioshock had this. Would you please tag thing?
Would you kindly? Yeah.
Would you kindly? And then causing like the player character to do whatever, right? I'm thinking that there's actually something similar to this in the short story actually, and that's a mother.
Really?
The mother. Because she,
yeah, because she's an agent. She's an actress. She's like
agent, right? She's the agent, and then she says things like, "You must do this for me," right? Right.
I see what you mean. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think so. Anyway, that aside, honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know how to score this. I'm gonna give it a 7.5, but I'm just picking a number because I'm forced to. Yeah.
You're not forced. You could give it a U for unclassified. Or
Okay,
something.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
A U as unclassified, because I honestly don't know how I feel about the story. I don't know how I should score it.
I just
you
think
for
you're just trying not to
I don't
hurt
know.
Rob's feelings or what?
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Listen, we're all adults here. Rob can take it, right? Unclassified. Listen, I mean, this might be like my first like 5 story. I don't know. Like, I'm confused though, because like, was it really good and that's why it made me depressed, or was it really? I don't know. Like again, the writing technical standpoint, I think I'm going to settle on a 6. I think that's my lowest score I've given anything. So since I joined you chaps on this little reading adventure of ours, yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 6. Again, like I feel like it was a little on the nose. It was a little like, I appreciated like the dark humor. What I thought was like, it was a little dark humor, but it just hits too close to home in this day and age. Maybe a few years ago when I wasn't as like depressed about the state of the world. But again, if you know someone who needs to be hit over the head with like charismatic manufactured leaders are bad and it leads to tyranny, unpredictable tyranny, give them this story and say it's classic sci-fi, but you're going to learn a lesson, hopefully, from it. So I'm going to settle on a 6. Technicality good, depressing reminder about where tyranny always goes, bad. Like so, 6 for me.
Say, all right. I guess we have a 9, we have a 7.5, we have a 6, and we have a from me.
Yeah. That's my favorite score.
It's algebra.
All right. Well, and with that, I guess that's the end of our examination of The Adventurer, and I think it's actually a story worth reading. So if our listeners are curious, please check it out and give us a like and subscribe if what we say is not completely nonsensical to you all and you kind of enjoyed what we were talking about. And with that, goodbye.
If you really enjoyed it, though, don't follow. Just only if you kind of enjoyed it.
All right. Take care, guys.